I am really delighted to be hosting this roundtable discussion with three of my very esteemed colleagues who work in the area of public engagement in the digital humanities. So I sent out some questions in advance, and for the first time ever, normally when I share something and I send out questions, I hear absolutely nothing. I'm not even sure anybody received them. But not with this panel. In fact, we began having a conversation about the questions online already. So I am very much looking forward to the live session. So let me just introduce everyone on the panel in case you don't know them. And very conveniently, they have sat down in alphabetical order, in the order that I have their bio notes. So Jenny Bergenmar, to my right, is Professor of Comparative Literature and the head of the Department of Literature, History, and Ideas and Religion at the University of Gothenburg. Her research interests include diversity in infrastructures, information history, metadata practices within the DH, medical humanities, queer literature, and theory, and reception theory. Marianne Ping Huang, next to her, is Associate Professor in the School of Communication and Culture and Comparative Literature at Aarhus University. She serves as the Academic Officer for Creative Collaborations and Digital Humanities with the Faculty of Arts, bridging university research and the creative and cultural industries. She is the current co-chair of the DARIAH Teach Working Group and was also key to the development of the DARIAH Teach platform and content that we have worked on for many years. And last but not least is Sanita Rinsone, is an associate professor in the Faculty of Humanities at the University of Latvia. Her areas of research interest include digital humanities, digital cultural heritage, citizen science, and participatory research methods. And she also has an expertise in the study of folk narratives, life writing traditions, and oral history. And interestingly, I read on her website, she's the author of children's literature. So I think that is worth a conversation in during the sessions. So you probably also, my rather poetic introduction, I'm an Irish scholar before I started doing digital humanities, so I always have Irish references in most things that I do. So I put the questions here, and maybe I'll start. I'm not sure who would like to start. Maybe Jenny? You would like? I won't reread them because you can read them here.
I think this is an excellent theme for a conference that made me very happy to be part of this, because I've been to some digital humanities conferences where I felt that maybe this is something that was missing, the part where we discuss who is this for, when we build these tools and we create infrastructures and we stay at discussing how it can support research. But I know that there will be many, many interesting and diverse examples of how infrastructures for engagement can be created throughout this conference. I've already seen some interesting examples in the posters, and how digital art and humanities can connect to society throughout this conference. And my foremost example is the project QueerLit, which was an infrastructure project that was based in previous grassroots digitization initiatives to collect and describe LGBTQ plus literature. And the project grew out of that kind of information activism, which has a long tradition. And I can also mention that Koralka Golub, who is the national DARIAH coordinator for Sweden, was also part of this project. And what we do was trying to preserve those previous efforts by the community and channel them into a national infrastructure. And we had a collaboration with the National Library of Sweden and with a community, a queer community archive. And we created a bibliography of LGBTQ+ literature that can be accessed through the National Library catalogue. So that is kind of an intervention into a national infrastructure. And we also created subject term for describing this material, which can now be used by any librarian indexing in the national catalogue. So it really was a project that invited engagement, both from public librarians in public libraries and ordinary readers, which we engaged with through workshops in Pride festivals and through social media. And one major question that was important in this project is how to mitigate the tension between a national infrastructure that is aimed to serve the public in general and the access needs of certain groups.
Sanita, would you like to follow? You have to turn on your mic as well.
Okay, hello everyone. So nice to be here, and also I'm very happy about the topic of this conference. Not often it happens. My research, as Susan mentioned, focuses on participatory digital heritage infrastructures, how they are designed, sustained, and cared. Especially what interests me is over time, I mean long-term collaborations. And I come to this through the work with folklore archives, folklore collections, and building digital folklore archives. And most recently, also digital life writing collection built collaboratively and keeping those collaborations beyond just collecting the material. And another recent project is a so-called Easter project, where we combine and explore civic participation with at-risk heritage and artificial intelligence. And this is led by Luxembourg Center for Contemporary and Digital Heritage, Tuce, who is also national coordinator for Luxembourg. So in those cases, well, I see digital infrastructure not simply like as a platform for access, but more as a long-term social arrangement, like a space where to build some kind of relationship. And actually, we are quite new in this. If you remember, 2010, starting this participatory wave, participatory turn, being so excited about crowdsourcing thing, getting many hands together, doing things, etc. So what's now? It's 10 years more since then. So what are our relationship with the people that contributed massively? So what has happened? And this is what interests me. We did the same at the Archives of Latvian Folklore, where I worked for 20 years, starting in 2013-14, first crowdsourcing campaigns, but they evolved in something that we maybe were not expecting. Those were growing expertise by people that started to learn, understand, and were involved in collection building in digitizing process. So this, this is what interests me, these long-term collaborations, not just hop on, hop off participation, but like this long-term thing. Yeah.
So I was very happy that Sanita mentioned kind of these long-term relational engagements that actually make up maybe an infrastructure. I was very happy that Emiliano talked about ecosystems. I think that's mainly where I'm working today. I'm working in ecosystems with cultural and creative actors. So the digital is actually something that is a little seamless. It may be there and it may not be there. But participation is something that is actually knitting an infrastructure or an ecosystem together. And I think that's really worth thinking about because it's also about, so Jenny was mentioning, and thank you again also from me, Susan, for making this roundtable happen. We have been talking about this way of working for over 10 years, right? But I think When Jenny mentioned working, and talking about with infrastructures, about building infrastructures, it's like, construction business, it's technology, and it's also that, but it's also this kind of something that takes, as participation always does, numerous iterations. For participants and stakeholders to stay within a very slow and stubborn way. Participation is also full of friction, and friction is what develops the network of an ecosystem. It's not always efficient, but it's always relational, and at the end, it contributes a lot of value that will kind of go beyond, the reach of which will be kind of larger than the exact tool or technology or something like that. So if I should talk to one instance, I could talk about, this is the way I teach actually, always. But I could, in this, at this roundtable, talk obviously to the latest course we did together for DARIAH-Teach, which is the course on social justice in the digital humanities, which was actually a huge participation work. It was like getting from the idea, from talking about this, and from realizing when encountering also the global DH community and symposium, how much is going on, where, going from being digitally enabled, or maybe sometimes rather the other way around, going from having a social justice project with communities, doing something by the communities, and then realizing that it will empower you and your reach will be bigger if you become digitally enabled. Realizing how many of these projects are out there and the reach of them, the impact of them in their local community and beyond that. I think that was a huge insight when we connected together with across 2 working groups, which is also a collaboration between DARIAH-Teach and the ELDA work group, so Cora and Walter, and with a lot of young research, junior researchers, and then the case communities. That took a long time. It took a long time to actually engage also the case community in designing with us, for us to listen and to develop the respect that if someone has done something, then they have a deciding word in how it should be put into a digital platform. I think that was a lot of insight into that. And these insights, you're also asking the question about, that it goes actually beyond discipline and obviously beyond nation borders.
So thank you all very much. That was a terrific opening. The second question I posed, I will read because I'm not sure everybody agrees with me. So I did argue in the abstract that digital arts and humanities make something happen, much to the counter or maybe agreeing with Austin writing about W. Yeats's poetry. So I asked the panelists, do you agree or disagree? And I'm not sure they agree, and that's all fine. Jenny, would you like to start again?
Yes, I do agree. But as I said before, I think it's important then that the scholarship in digital arts and humanities think about the communities that are concerned when they design and carry out research. And I think actually that the work we've been doing with metadata is a good example, because metadata can be a quite lightweight way of accessing history, opposed to the resources it takes to digitize collections, for example. Often that funding isn't present for communities that do their own archiving, community archives, but metadata can be a way to make people discover materials without that material being fully digitized. So, of course, metadata is also a way of creating new paths into the past, which is especially important for minorities, of course, that have been misrepresented or excluded from historical records. And metadata work has been practiced by communities long before we had any digital tools. So that work is just being carried on in a different realm now. And this means, of course, treating metadata not as a neutral technical tool, but as interpretive work and collaborative work and ethical work. And also, it needs recognizing the need to critically examine the existing metadata systems, of course, that are often skewed or flawed in different ways. But my answer to this question is that it can, of course, be hard for communities themselves to make things happen, to build something or create digital cultural and heritage resources. You need a kind of financial and organizational resource that are usually not accessible for community groups. So universities and cultural heritage institutions need to be open for community-driven initiatives, as both Sanita and Marianne said before, and create alliances with them.
So yes, but what comes to my mind, 2 things I would like to reflect. First is that what happens is not often immediately visible, measurable, or documented even. So digital infrastructures we are speaking about can be like impulses that creates the spark. It can become resources for creative cultural production. Do you recall films, theater performances, musical concerts, literature, local heritage initiatives as well, education, and what struck me recently, video games as well. I mean, that's the afterlives beyond intended scholarly use can be really, really amazing, but we do not know about them. We do not know about them because it's not the way how, like, it's not like reporting or something. We just make them open and let them. So that's one thing. And but another thing is the crisis context. So when the question becomes even more like sharper, that digital humanities can make something happen more faster. Support documentation, rapid response, collecting campaigns that happen during COVID, for example, also in war settings or environmental crisis, public involvement in collecting something, monitoring also. But the question is, and what we also faced when COVID came and pandemic was announced and we wanted to create a campaign of collecting pandemic diaries, how participation ready are our digital infrastructures? When the need has come, when there's the urgent situation, and we will start slowly think how to do this, etc., etc. So that's the question, yeah.
Yeah, I think I agree. Yes, but I think in a less optimistic way than I used to. I agree that it's possible to make something happen, but exactly just if you have the respect that there are so many knowledges invested in collections, in archives, in the ecosystems. So an openness to a multitude of knowledges around the table, and an acceptance that with the records, the data you hold, you also hold probably a number of histories and historiographies. So it's, if you can create that kind of, as you know, seats around the table to participate, and I think you are right. If the infrastructures are actually able to open up to that, courageous enough, then I think absolutely it can move something. I think we should also, if we're talking about digital enabled participation with digital collections and metadata and infrastructures, we should definitely acknowledge what cannot go into the digital, sort of the materialities, the embodied experiences, things like that. If you work with, I know you have done that, and you also kind of with embodied archival material, if you work with slavery collections, things like that, you realize that there is so much that cannot go into these archives, and you need to have a sensitivity around that. Also to get like an engagement with communities that are invested in such archives. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you again. So my third question maybe was less contentious. I asked about theories and or methods that underpin each of the panelists' participatory or an engaged research, and maybe just ask everybody to speak to one of these and how it was implemented. So Jenny, you're always starting.
Yes, I think we often discuss digital scholarship technically, but this work also consists, of course, of social arrangements and emotional relations and care and belonging, as you have both discussed just now. And I tried to answer this question, but at first I was very general, and I thought that you need to have an open mindset, and you need to have an organization that is organized around generosity, and that's not very concrete. But I think one way of putting that principle into method has to do with how we organize things very practically. For example, in terms of funding, if you work with community groups, they will have difficulty to fund their work. They will probably be doing a lot of work on their spare time. So I think one method is to push towards our financiers to be able to fund such persons that are not maybe PhDs or academic in that way, but that we are able to fund them in a long-term capacity in our projects. I think it's really, really important. We managed to do that in Queerlit. We included community experts in the research team. The person who took initiative to this project was a school librarian, and he was also part of the project, Sebastian Lundad. He had collected and described queer literature on his own webpage for a long time. So we were really happy to be able to include several librarians who had real expertise and a long time commitment to this particular subject. So they just had a real influence on how we developed our work in the project, and both the terms we developed and the bibliography we put together, and also on indexing practice, that is to say how these terms were used to describe materials. And that long-term commitment, if you can accomplish that, is another thing than bringing community experts in as consultants as different stages of a project. And that was exactly what you were saying before, Sanita, that long-term engagement is something that in itself is a method that supports participation. So it meant that work that was previously unfunded and carried out by people privately instead was paid by the university. Yeah.
Yeah. I was thinking about the question, and I think what I'm looking forward and exploring could be called like as grounded participation, to take at times slow pace and go beyond the digital environment and speak and hear out and devote some time. And one thing I've found very useful is actually life story interviews, which I come from another field. So people working, volunteering with folklore collections, and we know them by usernames, and then to go to their homes and to understand their point of view, why this work matters to them, what they get from them, and generally how it situates in their life routine and everything. And that was quite, I don't know, many things that I couldn't imagine. For example, there was a comparison one lady made that volunteering in cultural heritage, a digital platform, is like her winter garden, because in summers she has her physical garden where to spend her hours, but in winter she gardens digital cultural heritage of folklore. But another thing is to bring them together as well, because, well, at least Baltic people are very introvert ones, and they like this working alone, not meeting people, etc., but trying to create this safe space where they are invited and they can speak out, not seeing infrastructure builders as high-level researchers. I mean, well, just to build like an equal dialogue, not to present with them, but to speak with them. That has been quite successful, and we have collaborated with a community which is not strict, like it's developing all the time for 10 or more years. So we know each other. So it's become more comfortable for people to meet and speak out. And also, of course, I'm pretty concerned about this project thing, which is short-term thinking, always requiring something new, something to advance things, and when money is over, then what's happening and how to keep things ongoing. So yes, basically participation, what I'm interested in is to create knowledge, not just labor, to see human behind it in the first place.
Yeah, if I should kind of, I think I would speak to two layers in a way, which would be a methodology, which is also, to me, a practice of culture, would be to do participatory design. So participatory design is a methodology. It is a methodology that actually comes from the 70s, where you would work on how would you integrate, implement new technologies in larger organizations from the point of view of workplace democracy. So it's a particular Scandinavian sort of approach to design technology with organization and workplace culture. So that legacy, in a way, to take that into doing participation, and you also know it from like the layers of doing, you know it actually with children's culture, and youth culture, to distinguish between to kind of design for someone. We tend to do that when we do something for children. We design something for them and then they can come and do something. But to actually put that to the side, we are not doing user studies, but we are engaging with to open up to creation by and across communities within the ecosystem. That's one thing, and that to recognize that actually as a practice of culture. It's a cultural practice to do that, and in a certain way, going back to the 70s, you might also say it's a kind of legacy or living heritage, to think about it in that way also. I think a particular way of doing cultural engagement with, you need to do something. In order to do it well, you need to do it with, in order to open up so you can make a space for someone to do something that you don't necessarily have kind of the ownership of, but you are, I think that's immensely important. And then I was thinking, Susan, just to add on, I think one of the first time we met, we've been working with each other for many years. You looked at me and you said, no, you're not doing digital humanities. You are doing digital media, maybe. And then I was thinking, because you were quoting or referencing Auden and Yates, that I would just mention sort of the working with artists as a huge inspiration and method also. And I just wanted to reference then something I think could be, important to think about for the next days also. We also discuss AI and how to do that. I went to one of Laurie Anderson's Republic of Love multimedia performances, and she was kind of doing her, integrated a lot of her backlist, and obviously also language is a virus with a reference to Burroughs and Burroughs cut-up techniques, and sort of to her this rehearsal or relaunch of language is a virus. It's also about, taking care of, when you work together, the terminology, the concepts, the words you use. Sort of be sensitive about that. I think we really need to do that today. It's our infrastructure and our collaborations are also about languages, about words, about, how do we counter a certain kind of viruses.
So maybe that's a very good segue into the next question, where I asked about the, as you all know, very toxic nature now of social media, also some web-based channels. And for me, it feels that sometimes I exist in this web-based bubble, because a lot of the work and what we're talking about today and in this conference is much more positive and affirmative, and I think of it sometimes as an antidote to this toxicity of a digital public sphere. So I asked the participants, do you agree? Maybe this is the one that not everyone agreed. I remember one not everyone agreed. Do you think that this is true, that we work in this more positive and affirming space, or maybe not?
I agree in some ways. I also disagree, but I agree. I agree in the way that you are saying we can come together as scholars in different fields and have productive academic discussions and fostering collaborations and so on. I went to an online conference at the University of Münster quite recently that was about banned children's books. And it was really a good example because there were several scholars from the US there, and they were able to create a safe enough space in that digital conference for people to really share their experience, which was very personal, being very attacked, and also librarians being very attacked by teachers being attacked by parents, and so on, because it's very local and community-driven, those book bans that are going on in the US. So that, I think, was there is a toxic reality outside of, but the conference was a safe space where we really could discuss these issues. But in another way, scholars working with controversial subjects are not actually safe at all. If you're working with subjects that have become topics in ongoing culture wars or politicized in different ways, being a scholar at a university will not protect you from being attacked on social media or the target of email campaigns or filmed involuntarily while you present your research or teach, for example. And all these examples have happened to colleagues of mine that work with gender topics. And in addition to this, I think academia can also be toxic in itself in other ways, connecting to what we have discussed before about vulnerability and social and emotional aspects. It demands of us to be constantly performing on top and constantly competing and publishing in a steady stream. And these are not really practices that foster the give any space for us to be humans that are vulnerable. And for me personally, I'm a neurodivergent scholar, and I'm also active in medical humanities and disability studies. And I think there are some key things that has to do with accessibility that could improve in academia in generally, and also in digital humanities and on the other DH projects. Access is not just about physical spaces or technical solutions to certain people's limitations. It's about lowering the thresholds of participation and empowering people with different backgrounds and different abilities to co-create. And also, of course, to acknowledge ableist or otherwise discriminatory aspects of our work is organized in academia and in the cultural heritage sector. And this could, for example, be challenging our publication patterns, the very chrononormative academic structure that forces us to have work at this high speed and to publish in very specific ways. And we could adopt a slower and more sustainable scholarly communication. And this also, of course, is about reflecting on your own positionality in relation to your work.
Yeah, I could go on. I also would be cautious about seeing scholarly digital environment as automatically positive. In crisis context, as I mentioned before, digital participation may become urgent, necessary for documenting, etc. But it also raises a lot of questions that comes along, which is trauma, misinformation, unnecessary exposure. Very much agree also with what you said about lowering the threshold of public contribution. But one more thing is, and speaking about this, how do we make better engaging at public, etc.? How do we credit those who participate, those who contribute? There's been quite an issue. So in folklore collections, we tend to publish, yes, this is collector, this is the one who processed the material, etc. Do we credit those who transcribed the material or provided some additional information or metadata? Are their names actually seen? That's one question, that not to treat contributors like technical assets or something like that, but really to understand the value they're doing. And one more thing, I think that What is needed is actually the habit, to grow the habit of participation. We have been quite active when we need to support like some humanitarian causes, etc. But in the times when things are calm and like kind of normal, the habit of participation of society in general, and I think that starts at schools. How open and active we are to communicate and with schools to involve school children, inherit digital infrastructures, if actually tools are built like that, that they can do something just to get the knowledge of that. But I think what Jenny already mentioned, that those risks of exposure is one thing, and working with personal or sensitive documentary heritage is when I face those issues, like diaries, autobiographical writing, and building a digital collection in collaboration, I can see that actually people not always are aware of how open internet is. So they bring us diaries of their mom or granny that has passed away, and they say, put online. Nothing's there, put online. I mean, and we, as digital collection builders, responsible, have a dialogue with them, trying to explain what it actually means, etc. So, maybe I will not finish my thought, which started somewhere, but pass to you. So.
Yeah, I very much agree, actually, with you, Jenny and Sanita, that not even if you stay in the bubble, are you kind of out of a toxic environment, and it's a systemic thing. It's a question about sort of the efficiency, that creates a certain, or upholds, if we are kind of, I spoke before about participation is a slow discipline. It's a discipline of being sort of staying with the trouble. Just to cite one of my favorite inspirations, Donna Haraway, stay with the trouble. Stay with the frictions and things like that. That's really important, but you don't get, like, you know, a lot of publications out of that. And I think the systemic thing is very much about also the business models that knowledge institutions hold and uphold themselves with. There are business models, and even though, you know, you can have researchers that get ousted, and in Denmark there was a top-up on toxicity on social media and whatnot, sort of junior researchers engaged in gender studies, in environmental studies, in geopolitical studies. They were named in the Danish parliament as activist researchers, sort of pointing to the humanities and the social sciences and saying, you know, is this actually what we want? So the universities would back their researchers from the point of view of freedom of research, but still it's like, you know, something that will then go into when you are considering who is going to be allowed to do the next grant solution proposal, or to take part in a Horizon proposal, and overall kind of what is said about and thought about and politicized about with the arts and humanities and the social sciences. And I think, you know, in an age where you could say that data is the capital, efficiency is the way that we kind of mine it, that for us, as also being engaged on the side of humanities, social sciences, arts, working with people and people's traces on this earth, to uphold human community and life-centric approaches also to data is really, really important. And I think this is, we've been talking a lot about accessibility. Accessibility is really, really important. Freedom of speech, freedom of research, openness. I think for the next few decades we're going to talk about maybe obligation, collectiveness, and words that you would rather find in kind of the care principles. This will be, I think it's due time also for us as building infrastructures or working in ecosystems with arts, humanities, and social sciences, that we kind of step into this and say, yes, this is our obligation in order to actually trust in maybe a new public, as you were calling for, Susan, at least to be more optimistic around positive and affirming contributions. I think we need to step up. We are obliged. We are the only one who are really obliged.
So thank you, Marianne. Another very good segue. For a last question, I wanted to ask the participants, thinking over the time that we have been doing this research, we've been reinterpreting, reimagining in many ways our past, and following on from the idea of responsibility, what is our responsibility as researchers for this reimagining, reinterpreting, that of our own assumptions, that of the people that we work with, the communities, as well as our society more generally?
I think both Sanita and Marianne answered this question of responsibilities really well just now. But for me, acknowledging work that is being done outside of academia and to acknowledge that as proper knowledge is key, and also to try to take care of and safeguard initiatives that are driven by the public, for example, to collect and document their history, and to create such alliances between academia and community groups also, of course, means to acknowledge the uneven power relations and the established ideas of what counts as proper knowledge production. And I think that such work and such alliances can help us and inspire us to develop new methods and new ways of organizing research. But it also demands that we do what Sanita discussed before. We rethink how we work, think about how to credit participants and build those long-term relationships that can feel like safe spaces. And to create the possibilities for participation as co-creation, as you said, Marianne. And I also definitely agree what you said, Sanita. You brought up that crisis in different contexts and trauma. I think it will inevitably be a central part of what we need to do if we are to take responsibility as scholars in academia, because there is so much going on and it affects a lot of different groups in society, and I think the university can do more. Yeah, and we also need to support early career scholars. You mentioned that, Marianne, and I also think that is a very, very important obligation to foster environments where people can thrive in academia also, and carry on and develop new projects and perspectives.
Okay. For me, I think the challenge could be to move from the concept of digital infrastructures as access to infrastructures as platforms of mediation, maybe preparedness as well, and also shared responsibility. I might sound very positivistic about things. That's not an easy thing. I think we need infrastructure that supports participation that we are speaking about today, also creativity and all the afterlives that we can imagine, but also that protects, allows to verify, to keep context, also care. And seeing how things go on in political levels. It also was what we discussed before this discussion. What happens if something changes and you keep no ability to, you as an infrastructure maker, who can access, who cannot access? I mean, seeing different populist rhetorics, that's, yeah, so we need infrastructures ready before heritage becomes at risk, what I was also talking, but I do not see participation and also collaborative methodologies as an easy and costless way how to do things. It's not like that. We fail quite often because it involves people, technology develop, and everything else. But I think it's important that we remember that and yeah, thanks. I lost my.
Yeah, I'm not sure what to add now. I think what grows responsibility is to acknowledge where you're situated, that you are one voice among many voices, but also kind of to speak that voice then from your position. I think that's really, really important. It's important also for, and I think that will be a hard one, right? To get that back into academia, saying, you know, as you say, to acknowledge that knowledge is produced in so many ways by so many clever communities, and yeah, to you know, our way of doing knowledge production is one among many. Our way of knowing our knowledge system is one of many. That's a responsibility to acknowledge that and take it in and try to stay with it. And then I think it is a responsibility to care for, but also to show that it can be done, it's doable, as an intergenerational responsibility towards research assistants, students, junior researchers, etc. Kind of to, you know, encourage in the real sense of the word, you know, it's like courage, it's absolutely doable, and this is what we do.
So thank you all so much. We're even ahead of the time I had scheduled. We will take questions, so think of some. We have plenty of time, about a half hour. I see Ed is readying the mic. So maybe while you're thinking for a couple of minutes, maybe I can just do a little bit of not summarizing, but picking out some of the points that really resonated with me. Terms like generosity, thinking about what long-term scholarship means with communities, that we create knowledge and that it doesn't disappear. We have a problem with short-termism in our projects, but this might also mean long-term funding, not just for the infrastructures we create, but for the people we create it with. I heard several times the sensitivity to the audiences that we work with and their needs, as well as aspects of the, let's say, digitization process that cannot be digitized. I like Sunita's term of grounded participation. I think Marianne used the phrase that I like a lot, creating with and not only for communities, that a lot of times people think of participatory humanities as an alternative form of user studies, as Marianne said. But I think both Sunita and Jenny and Marianne really talked about it more as a cultural practice and a research practice. The idea of participatory design in and of itself as a method and a theory. Jenny talked a lot about it's not, and Sunita, we didn't think of just not physical access, but even physical access in working with the software, but how do we lower the threshold for co-creation? And several people mentioned how do we better credit and attribute the work that is done. Jenny talked about, I like this term, a kind of slow scholarship that got taken up, that we have more time to engage and maybe less pressure in publishing. And I think it's very true for people who've worked on these participatory projects. You're so busy working with the community you're working with, it's very hard to find the time to publish, and it's very hard to measure what it means to work in a participatory way in our economy of publication. I also felt it resonated with me about the sensitivity of putting materials on the web. Often we collect them and we say, oh, it goes up because then we have another diary, we have another letter. But what does that mean for the family who might find their work, particularly if we get it, their relations, materials all of a sudden on the web and they didn't even know it existed. And we should be aware, even more than the people we work with, of potential backlashes. I like these ideas that we have, and I felt this strongly in my project, that often what we work with are the only traces that individuals might have left behind. And I do think, I agree, that it does carry an additional burden of care. And the care principles, I think, is one that probably we will need to think about more, and expanding that into what does an infrastructure of care look like. Maybe to sum up some of the things, I think what resonated with me is how we rethink how we work as researchers in this participatory mode. What does it mean for us to take responsibility? And I think for DARIAH particularly, and for all of you here who work in infrastructure, what does it mean to create these kinds of platforms that mediate this type of knowledge? How could we do better at widening participation and not reinventing these participatory platforms in building them? So maybe now some people have thought of questions that you might ask the panel. Oh, it's on the move, so there must be a question over there.
Hi, thanks everyone. Thanks, many thanks to the panel for raising so many important issues in such a cogent way. And I think in Susan's summary as well, I mean, we see that.
Oh, and Kostis, may I interrupt you? I already did. But maybe you could say your name and where you're from when you ask a question.
I'm Kostis Dallas. I'm teaching in Vilnius University. I'm also chairing the Digital Intelligent Methods and Practices Observatory working group that we're trying to restart this year. So the issues are there. We know them from years. We know how they are exacerbated and complicated in discourses that start, for instance, over indigenous studies. Questions of, not just of data sovereignty and who owns the research, but also cultural protocols and all these things that you raised one way or another, how to reinvent participation. So the things that was going through my mind is how, because I'm listening to this discussion, it's a panel of academics, mostly, of researchers, right, who talk to an academic community. And then I'm just trying to figure, if we were to think in terms of Jim Clifford's critique of the frontier mentality and the notion of the contact zone in which both parties come to the place in order to exchange equitably. I understand, because we are in the same position. We do our research and we say, we're generous. We're going to bring them in. We're going to give them a place on the table. But does it work like that? Bernadette Lynch, for instance, found that it doesn't work in museums, that you just bring the communities around the table to co-design the plan of the museum, because for them, there is a different thing. They've got a different way of understanding not just what the whole thing is about, because we have our methodologies, and we can open those methodologies, but also their grudge, their ability to stand aside from us. So I was wondering, and this is my question to the panel, if we were to think about the new wave of digitalization with generative artificial intelligence now, does this complicate, or does it equal the field effectively? Does it provide opportunities in order to be able to reshape that relationship so that they go away of those collaborations with something to show for themselves, the other side, not just to be part of our wonderful world, or does it make it more complex by creating new kinds of inequities, new kinds of filtering, et cetera, et cetera? So this is my question to the panel.
Yeah, thank you for that question. It's a very good and pertinent question, and kind of to that may and may not go to the point where, you know, doing participation is comes with most frictions, but also with a lot of learning. I think, for one, the care principles in themselves are such a learning. Over, you know, years, they came from indigenous communities as a way of getting principles around, yes, data ownership, but also of, you know, giving back to the community. If the community is participating, the community should have something giving back. And I think it's the care principle as such is a contribution from indigenous communities, and a contribution we can really learn something from when we are doing. Now we are obliged, when we get like big projects, to actually undergo an ethics review with the Commission. And if you think about the care principles and what would you put in an ethics framework for a project that goes beyond having, you know, a data management with templates for consent and GDPR and et cetera, then you realize how much you can learn from these processes. And I think working with, I think you get some hard learnings, you know, reaching out to indigenous communities to do collaborative research. You get it right back in the face. One, if you don't include the community from the beginning of the proposal writing. Two, if you don't negotiate sort of not just the concepts, but the objectives say really a lot of indigenous communities are not doing new business models. It's like, what? We can't take part in that. So, you know, it's a learning, and it's worthwhile doing it. Really, it is. You realize exactly how little you know yourself and how much you need to, learn from somebody else's living ethics. This is the way we live. This is the way we work. These are the technologies we may accept. We would actually rather, forge our own technologies. This is the data we may contribute. This is the data we will, under no circumstances, contribute. And this is what we want, back for our community. I think that I tried it a few times, and it's, for me, it was a steep learning curve, and yeah, really beneficial. So very good question. We are with, participation between our knowledge system and indigenous knowledge systems. We are at a core of both what you can learn, but also the really, really hard frictions. Yeah. Did that make sense?
I don't know if this answers the question, but I was also thinking about what you came into just a second ago here, about when you bring things that have been described and collected by groups themselves into an infrastructure, you also adapt it to different standards, different principles, different ways of working that may not fit. So there is that friction always, and I think in maybe in any community that will appear. And it's absolutely necessary that we also think of the losses, and as you said, also what maybe should be kept out of it. And you will also discussing this about the vulnerable materials that suddenly become very searchable, maybe through metadata and so on, that might need to be protected in another way. So yes, thank you for that question. It's a really important one.
Is there another question? Ah, in the back.
Thank you very much for this very productive discussion and panel. My name is DARIAH Lagan. I'm based in Ireland, Maastricht University, now third year PhD. I want to continue on this discussion, and especially the point of the relation. Now you kind of make it two teams of people of knowledge and society as the discussion theme. So the digital arts as a keywords for the theme. Where's the artist in that? So how can we say digital arts and humanities with artists and for society? Or, I mean, there's no artist in the panel, but how you think we can examine the infrastructure if we what's the relation? Is the middle agent is the artist, or I mean, the role of practice-based or artistic research is bringing artists to academia so they can understand some of that and produce their work so they can be in the middle between academia and art or public. That's my understanding. There's a lot, it's a new kind of practice method. But yeah, my question is, where's the artist in this circle? Thank you.
It's a really, really long time discussion. Where's the big A in DARIAH? But yes, artistic research, it's not necessarily bringing the artist into academia. It also goes the other way around. So we are now getting, one of the big calls will be on, research call on artistic intelligence. I'm not sure that you can do it in that way. You need to collaborate in order to get, into the relationship with the arts. I don't think we have necessarily been very good at doing that. We have been talking about it for a long time. But artistic contributions, learning from the arts, while the arts are not fully integrated into the infrastructure, I'm not sure they really want to become that. But learning from, artistic interventions can be methods. So I worked for years with avant-garde art, also as social movement and political movement, and a lot of the quote-unquote pure artistic methods could easily move into social intervention, even political intervention, could move into, also what is data, what is not data. Artists working in the field of AI, where they are particularly working on the faultiness, kind of hacking things. What does that kind of give us? I think artistic methods, maybe, to learn from artists would contribute a whole lot. But yeah, they are not here yet.
I don't really have much to add. I think you answered very interestingly, Marianne, but I was also thinking specifically about how creative work can change methods and also maybe pave the way for better participation, because when we leave our safe way of doing things in seminar work or workshop formats, things can happen if you engaged bodily expression more, if you work with tactile methods, if you permit people to move around a room instead of just sitting and listening to someone else. I think those kinds of things can really be used productively within the humanities, and that's not what we are best at. The artists know this better, and I have learned a lot from a collaboration with Durham University in England, where they have a medical humanities center and work with what they call creative facilitation. And that is precisely to facilitate participation of groups that are normally have a hard time with the usual academic formats. And then you have another way of working that also permits other ways of developing your collaboration, developing your thought process. Yeah.
Yeah, I will just shortly add perhaps very basic thing that, I think artists, at least how I see it, it's a core team member actually of building infrastructures, because they allow us to make those infrastructures seen publicly. They add a visual design recognition that's like visual identity. And in our team, at the Archives of Latvian Folklore, we always have artists in team. And we collaborate for years with one of the most prominent contemporary artists, Krish Salmanis, who creates old designs, meaning like creating this sequence of designs, conceptualizing visually. So that's helpful, but yeah, that's a bit perhaps differently.
I don't know if there's one more question. Maybe when I say this, then there wouldn't be one. But after this, we will just go outside. There'll be a reception, but we have time for one more.
This is about the arts.
Sure. It follows on.
This is connected to the question about the arts, which I was inwardly cheering about. I will say I have a personal experience with this because I moved from being a professor of English who did digital humanities to being a professor of digital humanities in a digital media arts and technology department, where I've recently seen my colleague Tommy Hartung get tenure this year, huzzah, because getting tenure in academia is hard enough, but for an artist in the US, we pulled that off, thank God. But I'm in a place where I can collaborate with an artist for the first time in my scholarly life, and it's starting to change my point of view. Artists have this sense when they're successful, they know how to grip the public by making just the right impression, and suddenly things become crystal clear. And when they can be attached to a scholarly humanities project, they can provide some kind of vision that it might almost seem too simple to us humanities people, but they're able to bring something out into the open and make it more visible to people passing through. They're the ones who are going to help us engage. I guess that's a comment, but I want to say I want to bring my colleagues from the digital arts. I have a digital music colleague now too, which is amazing, who can do sonification. But if we can bring them with us to these conferences, I think our work might start to break out of the bubble I think they see us as sitting in a bubble being boring, and they can make us more exciting. So I guess that's a comment. Yeah, did others have experiences like that too?
So I think that's a really positive and affirming place to end. I wanted to thank all of you for being here. Thank my panelists, Anita and Marianne and Jenny, for their really wonderful contributions. And I hope we continue these conversations this evening and into the next few days. So thank you, everybody.